Welcome back to the Producer Evolution podcast. This episode is going to be all about gear. So my name's Corey Snapp, and I'm joined here with Felipe Miller yet again.
What's up, guys?
Just a quick little story to kick off this episode. You know, I live about 2.5 hours from DC here in the States, and there's a club called Flash that does these monthly producer meetups called Headroom Listening Sessions, where you can submit your newest track and listen to it on their Function One sound system. And, you know, everybody kind of gives each other feedback and everything. It's really a great community. I was chatting with one of the guys there about gear. He's just using like DJ headphones or whatever. And so no audio interface, no studio monitors or anything like that. Anyways, he hit me up on Instagram DM, just kind of to follow up that he was looking into some studio monitors and whatnot after our chat. And he was looking at like some 8-inch speakers, for whatever model. And, he saw that it was only selling them, as one instead of like a pair or whatever. And he's like, do I need two? And a lot of you might think, well, that's a silly question, but, it just goes to show that sometimes we take for granted the stuff that we know, when it comes to gear and production and everything. So, obviously, I told him, you need two monitors. And so I just figured that it would be a good opportunity for us to kind of dive into, getting started with gear, things to look out for, some of the equipment that you might want to get right out of the gate, and, maybe some best practices, and just kind of go off of that. So.
See, I kind of wish that they would sell monitors by pairs, because it really doesn't make that much sense to sell them individually, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I guess if you had like one go bad or something, it would be good to be able to get one just separate. But yeah, it seems kind of silly.
See, when I started off, making music, I actually thought you needed one monitor instead of two. And so I was like, oh, it's $140, $70 a pair. It's not that bad. And you're like, no, it's $140 for one. So it's, $280 for both of them. You're like, oh man, that's way too much, especially when you're not used to all the production costs when you get into it at first,
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a common thing then in that case.
So I feel like now for this in particular, I think it would be really nice to like talk about all this gear in terms of tiers. So that way, like when you start off, like kind of essential stuff would be, tier 1, and then you go up and stuff that isn't super necessary, but it'll help, with workflow and stuff. So do you want to get started a bit with tier 1, Corey?
Yeah, well, obviously you're going to need a computer, and it's kind of up to you whether you want to go the laptop or the desktop route. Personally, I have a desktop that was like a PC gaming rig essentially at one point, and for me it's just nice to have the studio here and have a powerful desktop that I can run a lot of different synths and VSTs, not really have to worry about computing power and everything. So
see, I feel like this also depends on like the genre you do too, like how much computing power you need.
Yeah, I guess for something more minimal where you don't have a lot of layers and whatnot, that you wouldn't really need all the computing power necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, with a laptop, obviously it's a lot more portable. If you're trying to produce on the road or and whatnot, it'd be nicer to have. But I use a desktop, and just wanted to share that bit.
See, when it comes to choosing between both, I've had both a desktop and a laptop. Something I will say is if you require a laptop when you're doing live shows, then maybe at some point invest in a laptop, a pretty good one that'll last you a long time. I know there's a whole debate on, Mac versus Windows in terms of what kind of PC you get. In terms of like the actual stuff going behind the hood, it doesn't, especially at the level we're all doing production, it's not going to really matter that much. But the way I think about it is if you're thinking laptops and you get a Mac, for example, if you maybe want to upgrade down the road, Macs keep their value longer than if you were to get a Windows, laptop. Plus, it's just, you can take it into an Apple store and they can fix it if you have the money, rather than maybe like a Windows laptop. It might be harder because each manufacturer does everything differently. But, if you're not going to be using stuff for your laptop, for live shows and stuff, then a desktop would work really well. And again, depending on what you're doing, you don't even need to get one that's super, super expensive. I feel like with at least 8 gigabytes of RAM for your typical recording stuff and, some sound design stuff, that's fine. Processor wise, you want to find something that's a quad core, so 4 cores for the processor. I personally like Intel, but there's a whole debate between AMD and Intel, but they work fine, both of them. And so that's just a few things to keep in mind. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes behind this, but we'll leave some links in the show notes so you guys can look further into it if you're looking at getting a computer right now.
Yeah, a lot of good points there, Felipe. I'd say once you have a laptop or desktop picked out, maybe the first thing to look at is an audio interface. Mm-hmm. There's varying levels of these, as far as price and quality and everything. Personally, I started out with the Scarlett,
Same.
the 2i4, but really the 2i2 is plenty, for most people's needs. And you can probably pick one of those up nowadays for maybe $100, maybe $150 tops for brand new. So,
see, I think I just upgraded my 2i2 to a newer generation. It was probably $150 or less, but what you get out of it is extraordinary. Now, depending on what level you're at with production, you can upgrade down the road. Of course, a lot of these entry level interfaces will basically go straight to USB. There's some that'll do Thunderbolt, so it's better, it's going to be faster, better performance and stuff like that. But that's just something you can invest in down the road. That's probably going to be something we'll have on a higher tiers, like, a better interface. But just like an interface that will basically, so you can record your audio from like a microphone or something straight to your computer, or, get your sound out from your computer to, let's say, a pair of headphones or, studio monitors.
Right, yeah, so that brings us to, I guess, essentially our last item of the quote-unquote Tier 1, which is, to have a decent is to have, like, a decent pair of headphones, like something that's going to have, like, a flat response. Personally, I have the Bear Dynamic. I think it's the DT880 Pro, whatever's on my head right now. But there's like Sennheiser makes nice headphones.
Audio-Technica's what is it, AT2020, pretty
I think the
well-priced.
AT2020 is the mic. I think it's like the ATM50 or something like that you're thinking of.
Yes, MTA50X. I'm using a 2020 for the mic right now. My bad. Too many numbers, I swear. So the ATH M50X by Audio-Technica are really nice. They're really well priced. I think last time I saw them, they're probably $150 or less. They sound pretty good in terms of like the response, frequency response. So it's not too low end heavy, not too high end heavy. Because what you want to make sure you do when you get a pair of headphones is get the reason why you're getting it as a flat frequency response is so when you're making a mix and it sounds pretty good on your headphones, it's gonna basically sound good everywhere else you go. If let's say you're mixing on beats, which tend to be pretty bass heavy, and then you basically you mix it in terms of that, and so it sounds pretty normal to you in those headphones, you bring it to, let's say, a car and there might be no bass or something like that. That's why you want to make sure you get a pretty good pair of headphones that don't have stuff boosted in certain areas.
Sure. And I mean, obviously it's good to have multiple reference points. So if you do have other headphones, they could be good just to have a few different reference points to see how how the track sounds on different headphones. But yeah, definitely for production, it's it's going to be good to have a nice set of headphones that have that flat frequency response.
For sure. All right, so now in terms of tier 2, so these are things that are a bit necessary, but it's not something you really, really need to, when you're starting off. So one of them would be a pretty good mic. You don't have to get the best mic out there, just a little something. So, if you're a vocalist, you can record some vocals, you can still upgrade your mic over time, or, send like a quick draft of something to someone, or you can record some stuff in your house. So like, for example, you banging some pots or something, add some percussion. Literally, the mic is so versatile in its uses. Just having one is really good. I know if you guys get them during Gear Fest at Sweetwater, I know they have mics like the Shure SM57s and 58s for $57 and $58 respectively. And they're pretty good. They're industry standard. They're not, the most expensive microphones, but they're really nice. The one I'm using in particular, AT2020, isn't bad at all. In fact, it's one of my favorites, and it's about $100. So you can get a lot of pretty good mics for not too much money.
Yeah, I have the. I started with the AT2020 USB version though. Ideally, I'd say you would want to have XLR input just for better quality. But the AT2020 USB worked, pretty good for most instances. For myself, I recently upgraded to this that I'm on right now, the Aston Origin, which I've been absolutely loving. I tracked some vocals with it and whatnot, but you definitely probably have a little bit more knowledge on the microphones than me, but main thing is just start with something fairly cheap and get used to recording different things with your mic.
Speaking of USB versus XLR, I remember AKG released a mic, I think, recently that was a USB mic, but it was supposed to be very, very high quality. And it was really interesting just because I'm looking it up right now, but it was like, you could record all the different, it's a Lyra, AKG Lyra for $150. And you can choose between the different polarities. So basically with polarity, cardio would be, you need like one direction mostly. Omnidirectional would be, from every direction. So, you can choose between different modes with certain microphones. So like this one in particular has one of those where you can switch the modes, and it looks really old school. It almost looks like, was it Clapbot or something from Borderlands? Really
Claptrap.
Interesting. Like the what?
Claptrap, yeah.
Claptrap. I haven't played that game, but I kind of remember the guy. So it's,
fun game.
So there's a pretty interesting mic to look at. The reason why we say to not really stick with USB mics that much compared with XLR is because if you can afford to get an XLR, go for it. You're not going to have some noise issues that you can get with USB, and just the overall tone is going to sound so much cleaner if you're doing it from, a XLR perspective rather than a USB perspective.
Yeah, right on. So I think that covers microphones. The next thing I would say for like tier 2 is a nice set of studio monitors. You don't have to start with anything ridiculous, obviously, just like with all of this stuff. Personally, I started out with the JBL LSR 305s. They're a 5-inch speaker. Those worked great for me for years. I have some friends that still use them. A lot of people start with like the KRK Rockets, they make a couple different sizes of those. The Yamaha, they have like the HS5, the HS8, I think.
The HS7s, which is what I have too.
And then recently, a friend of mine, Enamor, he swears by the PreSonus Aris speakers. He's got the Aris 8s, and they have like software where you can kind of, take a mic around the room, and it'll correct the speakers so that you can get as flat of a response as possible.
I know Genelix do that too, or at least like the higher end ones with they're like $600 for one speaker.
Yeah, but these are only like 100 and something a speaker. So they're at that lower price point, but
interesting.
Yeah, really nice monitors. So personally, I would say between those four would be something to look at to start with. And I don't know what you started with, Felipe, or what you recommend, but
so I started with the desktop speakers from Logitech, but I think the first pair I own are the same ones I'm using now, which are the HS7s. I swear by these. However, I have listened to, my friend Valen has a pair of Aris, PreSonus Aris, but they're about 4.5 inch or 3 inch or something like that. So they're really small. They're baby monitors, really cute, but they actually sound really good. I know that I just recently listened to a friend's KRK Rocket 5s, and they actually didn't sound as bad as I remembered them. So one of the things too to remember is you will probably end up collecting studio monitors as you progress, in production. And that's totally fine. In fact, the more monitors you own, I feel like the better it is for you, because you'll have a whole bunch of different reference points. I know most professional studios have at least 2 sets of studio monitors, so you can go between them, because some have, different frequency responses, some have different tones, that kind of thing. And so, if you don't have to sell them, I would personally say don't sell them. But don't worry, if you'll be doing this for a while, you'll save up enough money so you can get a really good pair of studio monitors down the road that are probably, let's say, for the $500 and each. So just remember to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I'd upgrade it to the Dynaudio LYD7s, but and when I did, I sold my JBLs, but I think the next set of studio monitors I get, I'll most likely hang on to these Dynaudios and yeah, like you say, have 2 different sets so that you can kind of bounce between the 2 and have that extra reference point. So yeah, that's a great point.
For sure. Another thing I think we can add to tier 2 would be a MIDI keyboard. And so there's a whole bunch of options for these. There's really cheap ones. There's more expensive, better ones sometimes, and it depends on what you want it, or you're going to use it for. And so if you're going to be using it for live performances, you might want to find one that has a bit more like live features. I know a lot of people that just have a MIDI keyboard in their studio just to like plot some ideas down in MIDI for their song and just call it good. And if you're used to playing keyboard or piano, then you'll probably want to make sure you find the right key style, whether it be semi-weighted, weighted, all that kind of stuff. But there's a whole bunch of different options for really cheap. And, I know I have a pretty big MIDI keyboard back here from Yamaha, and it's just it was like an electric keyboard, so you can just plug it into the wall and you can play it straight from there. But it works as MIDI too. So another thing you want to make sure too is you get the right size for your studio. You don't want to get a 70 to 80 key keyboard if your desk is super tiny. So you think I'm kidding. I basically, there'd be times when I'm playing my keyboard on my couch, like having the keyboard on my lap, because it doesn't fit anywhere in my studio. Yeah. And so, if you have like a really small desk, then maybe you can get like a octave to 2 octave,
Yeah, they make those
keyboard.
tiny little keyboards. Like, yeah, I think they even make like, I don't know if they make one. I guess they make 1 octave keyboards, but yeah, maybe even like a 2 octave would be fine if you have a really tiny space.
Yeah, so like, was it Akai has a pretty good smaller keyboard. The thing you want to remember though is typically with smaller keyboards, there's smaller keys. So if you got really beefy fingers like me, it's kind of hard to play keys because you'll end up playing 2 notes at once. You get really frustrated. So just make sure if you have a music store near you, like Guitar Center or something like that, or wherever they have in Europe, just go in and just play around different keyboards that are within your price range, and then see what kind of fits your style. Even if you might end up selling it down the road or collecting a few keyboards, it's still good to try them out and see what feels good for you.
Yeah, I mean, I started with the Oxygen 49, so yeah, 49 key, and I would recommend, what I liked about the Oxygen, even though it was like a lower end MIDI keyboard, is that it had the knobs on it and different things. So it's really good when you can associate a knob on the MIDI keyboard with whatever project you're working on, so you can kind of like manually turn knobs for automation sequences and stuff. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you can, get one that at least has a few knobs that you can map in your DAW as well.
See, I don't think FL Studio has a lot of compatibility with a lot of these knobs. I know Ableton in particular there's a keyboard from Novation that you can do a lot of stuff with, but it was it was like the launch key or something. My friend Agitor has it, and basically he can control any parameter, even inside Serum and Massive, from his keyboard, even Contact. It was super nice.
I can do that. You can do that in FL Studio as well. And I did it with the Oxygen, and I do it with my Native Instruments keyboard now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a, hang on, let me see. It's called Multi-Link to Controllers. You basically click that button, and then you turn whichever knob it is you want to turn, and it maps to any knob in any VST within FL Studio. And then you can just kind of, you can you could have like 10 knobs or more, however many your keyboard has, all mapped to different knobs within your DAW, and you can just tweak them. And it's super cool. It works. Maybe we can do like a video on that.
Now I know what I'll be trying out later today.
Yeah, no, it's super cool.
Well, that's nice. 'Cause you can just do that with an Xbox controller too, can't you? You just use
I don't know.
analog controller. You hit the right trigger and you get extra bass. Let's go.
That might be a hack worth checking out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess since we've been talking about monitors and stuff, I just kind of wanted to touch on the topic of a sub.
Yeah.
I kind of was running a sub for a while, and after kind of talking to some of the guys that are kind of making some big moves, they told me that pretty much nobody really uses a sub in the studio. It's kind of overkill. The thing is, though, if you have like you were saying earlier, speakers that are only like 3-inch or even 5-inch, you're not necessarily going to get a lot of those low frequencies. So that's where it's good to either have a set of headphones that are going to get that low frequency, or just try to get like a 7 or 8-inch studio monitor where they actually go down to those lower like 30 to 40 hertz, that range and whatnot.
See, I would say one of the issues, because like here at my campus, we have 2 studios. Well, we have 3 studios, and they all have a subwoofer in them, even the professional one. And I think the issue you can run into with that, if it's not done, if you don't set it up properly, is you can have a lot of that sub dissipate into the ground, and just you just feel all the vibration. It won't really help much. But I remember when I went to Sweetwater for Gear Fest, in one of their professional studios, they had huge monitors with pretty big cones. I want to say 8 to 10 inch, maybe. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Because I'm used to the metric system, so I don't know. But this really big, and it'll basically propagate all those lows through the air and not have to pass it, via vibration to like your table. Because you want to hear the bass. You don't want to cause an earthquake for everyone living in your place. This is in California, so.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking like professional studios where they're going to be treated really well too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess I would say if you are going to use a sub because you have smaller speakers or whatever, they make like sub platforms. I had one of those for a while, so it gets the speaker off of the ground and helps with that ground vibration and whatnot. And you can also, I don't know if you can see straight behind me, the taller bass trap back there. You could do bass traps in the corner of like 4 inches or more, of material to kind of help trap some of those bass frequencies too. But
it all depends on the positioning of where you have your sub.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, if you could afford it, maybe even just try hanging it from the ceiling and just having it facing you without touching anything. So that way it doesn't, go through the walls or anything. But
yeah. Okay, so I mean, I guess that kind of leads into one of our other items. I don't know if you'd call this tier 2, tier 3, or whatever. This is all kind of up in the air, but as far as room treatment goes, I would say it's good to have at least the left and right reflection points. Mm-hmm. So basically, I guess what do they say? Like if you were to put a mirror to the left and right of you,
you'd have to see your ear or the cone, right?
Yeah. So the speaker, wherever you see the speaker, the halfway point basically between your studio monitors and you is that reflection point. So I would start there as far as if you're going to do some room treatment, knock out those 2 first reflection points.
There's actually a really good video on acoustic treatment, which we'll link down below in the show notes. But another thing to do when you're setting up your studio monitors, actually, if you have a more rectangular room, you want to set your studio monitors facing basically the longer end rather than the shorter end, so that way the bass frequencies have more time or more space to move through, rather than like the shorter end. You want to have the longer end for that very reason. And then you can add all your acoustic treatment. You could add, typically what I like to do is do the left and right, do some behind the studio monitors, which is just like a panel, bass traps, and then if you have the money or the space, maybe something on the ceiling a bit, not too much. You can do like they sell cheap foam panels, which are, you can get them in like 1, 2 inch, 4 inch, or you can custom make them as well. You just get wood and was it rock wool, I think, like an acoustic foam, and
yeah,
you
like
can
fiberglass, pretty much.
Fiberglass kind of thing, yeah. And then you could just basically put fabric over it and make it look nice. There's the thing with this is you can make it look really stylish and also really useful. So it's something to look into. It's a bit of an investment when you go, and you might not hear it at first, but after a while you'll definitely start to hear it. You know, especially if you're listening specifically for stuff like reflections and where all the bass is going, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a huge difference I noticed. Yeah, these panels you can see behind me, they're kind of all over the walls, but it was custom, kind of like you're talking. You know, my dad and I, we just built out the wooden frames, and then I went to, I think it might have been GIK Acoustics or one of those sites where they actually sell just like the material separate. So I got some 2-inch and some 4-inch, put it in the panels, and then just took like black burlap and wrapped it around and kind of stapled it to the back. And yeah, it saved quite a bit of money, from buying, pre-made custom stuff, and it works great. So yeah, highly recommend it.
Even something to put under your monitors. You guys probably can't see it because of the camera angle, but under my monitors I have some foam that is doing two things. One, it's angling up a bit more so that way it's hitting my ears, and we'll talk about speaker positioning here just in a little sec, but that, and you have the foam also making sure that the bass doesn't vibrate the table, so that way it doesn't give all that extra stuff you don't need in terms of the sound and losing that bass because it's going through the table instead of through the air. So that's another thing you could probably invest in is studio monitor foam or stands too, which help. Or mix of both actually would be probably the best combination.
Sure, yeah. And like you mentioned, show notes and everything. We'll put a lot of stuff in the show notes on all the stuff that we're covering. Mm-hmm. You guys can find that stuff at producerevolution.com/008. I think that kind of really wraps up most things. I mean, as far as getting started, Felipe, we can look at, analog synths and stuff maybe in a future episode when, but yeah, to kind of wrap up, I guess I would say, figure out whether you want to go the laptop or desktop route, Mac or PC, whatever is your thing. Obviously you need a computer and a DAW. Start with an interface, something like the Scarlett 2i2 should be plenty fine. Maybe just do some research on similar audio interfaces like that and see what the pros and cons are, and what people are saying about them, and pick you up a decent set of headphones, and then from there you can start looking into studio monitors, MIDI keyboards, and room treatment and things like that. So
exactly.
You got any closing comments there, Felipe?
Nope. I think we're all good.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Bye, guys.